Hi there, my name's Leah, and today we're going to go over how to make the Ellie Snap wallet. First things first, hopefully by now you already have the pattern, and hopefully the pattern is what directed you here. If not, don't worry. There is a link to purchase the pattern in the description, and that way you can keep up with this. So let's get into what kind of tools you're going to need. Okay, so these are a lot of the tools that you'll be needing. Let's go over what we do with each one. So this one is a L square ruler. I like to use this particularly when I am folding the credit card slots because it gives me a measurement on both sides as well as a flat edge to fold the fabric against so that I make sure that everything's level. So this is a tool that I like. If you don't have one, you can use a regular ruler. Just take your time when you're folding the credit cards. Next up, we'll go over the pieces that are required for the leather strap that makes up the strap used on the wallet. So when you start off, I try and cut mine down to 3x1 to start. I use this just because I haven't purchased a proper leather tool, but as close as I get, it's usually not perfect. So when I round out the one edge, let's see, usually there's just a little bit of overhang. And so what I'll do is I'll use my ruler and my blade to trim it down so that everything is the right size and it's not wobbly. Then we have our snap pieces. So the female snap consists of two pieces. So the outside here, and then the piece that joins it on the other end. And so what we'll do for that is we'll use this tool to stamp a hole inside the leather. We'll fit the pieces through, and then we'll place them on this side and hammer it shut. And then we'll do the same for this one, which makes up the male portion of the snap. And that goes on this end, and you'll see it doesn't go through. So what we do is we only attach it to fabric A, piece 1, and that way when fabric B goes on of piece 1, that it covers it up and it's not noticeable. So we'll do the same thing there, except we'll use the opposite side and we'll again hammer it in. Let's see, and then you'll need some form of cutting tool so that you can cut your fabrics. Next step is going through and doing our preparation. So once you've got all of your fabric pieces cut out and ironed, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take both of piece 1 in fabric A as well as fabric B and bond them to interfacing. Next step is the credit card slots, and what we're going to do for that is we're going to use our L square ruler. We've got the fabric with the print pointing upwards in this direction. This is the top edge, and we're going to measure 2 1/4 inches from the top edge. We're going to keep this parallel to the cut that we've created. We're going to apply pressure here, and we're going to fold the piece up, making sure that the edges again are parallel with the previous cut. We're going to slide this right on out, and then we are going to take our iron and press that. And this is going to be our first fold. Okay. And once we've got our first fold, we're going to now create our second. And so what we're going to do, unfortunately, on this side, it reads differently and it starts, this is 0. So this is actually 1 inch. So we're going to do 1 3/4 inches. So that's right there. We're going to keep everything nice and parallel. We're going to pinch and fold at 1 3/4 inches. And if we did a good job, which this does look really nice, the top edge and our new fold are now 1/2 inch apart. So we're going to go ahead and iron this in place. Now this is the basis of our first credit card fold. We want to make 3 more, so we're going to repeat the process. And if we've done a good job, each of our points will match up at a half mark. So we're going to go ahead and repeat that process with our other credit card. Now that both the credit card slots are ironed, what I like to do is pin these in place, because right now if you do any kind of tugging or pulling, they're going to spread apart. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep them secure. And if you see, all of the layers meet up at about this point. So that's where we're going to secure it. And we're going to do that on both sides. And now if you tug on it, it's going to fall back to where it should. All right, next step of preparation is working on our leather tab. So what we want to do is, right now both of our edges are currently squared off, and what we'd like to do instead is have one of them rounded. So for this, we're going to use I think it's called a half round stamp or something like that. And we're going to want it, we don't want it to quite touch the edge because that never gets it quite enough. We want to be just past the edge, and that way we get a full round. And then we want to make ourselves as level as possible on these so that one's not higher up than the other. It's a little hard to see. And then we're just going to use our hammer to stamp it down. All right, now that I've finished making all the noise, you can see that we were able to get this pretty good. Unfortunately, as always, even though I do a pretty decent job of getting this to be an inch, it's never quite enough for the 25mm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my blade very carefully. We're first just going to remove the excess here. And then we're going to reshape our edge so that it's cleaner, because if you look at it right now, it's got like a dip in it on both sides, and I would like it to be cleaner than that. So we're just going to shave off this tiny little bit, and we're very carefully just going to go through and slice. Okay, now that we've done the one side, let's take another look. That looks a lot cleaner, so we're going to fix up this side too. And again, it's just a sliver, but it's all it takes to make it look uneven. And there we go. Okay, next step is going to be for our snaps. And what we're going to do is we're going to add our female snap onto this. And what I like to do for that is I will visually place the top of the female snap and get it just centered. And once I'm happy with that, I'll kind of apply a little bit of pressure and spin this around. And what that does is, because of the end here, it creates a nice circle, goodness, for me to follow when I'm punching out the hole. So for that, we'll take our punch, we'll line it up with our circle, and we'll create our hole. And from there, we can place the top of the snap in, place the other half on the other side. We want to use the rounded dip here, and we're going to swap out to this tool, which is going to apply pressure to the center and spread it out a little bit so that it grips onto this piece so it no longer falls off. And now it's nice and secure. Now for the other side, it's going to be a little bit different. For the male portion, what we want to do is we are first going to find our center on the right side. Oops. So I've created a small crease. It's probably easier to see from this side, but I've created a small crease of where my center is on this side. We're going to take the ruler. We're going to measure from that crease, and we're going to create a nice little mark to remind us that that is where we're going to be cutting. So we measure from the center, measure down 2 inches, and that's where we put the mark. We bring back over our mat. We take our hole punch. And we put in the male portion of the snap. We want to use this edge, and that way it holds onto it nicely and keeps the shape. And then we're going to use our stamper again. And now this is nice and secure and not coming up. So we now have piece 1 of fabric A with the snap, as well as our leather tab with a snap. All of our preparations are finally complete and we are ready to start sewing. So what I have here are the completed credit card slots, as well as both pieces of piece 3. What we're going to start off with is our credit card slots. We're going to mark the center of both of these because they are slightly wider than they need to be, and this is allowing wiggle room so that if you make a mistake, you can kind of fix it down the road. So what we're going to do is, what I like to do to mark the center is I just kind of fold it, and then I apply pressure on the center crease, and this is going to visually give me a guide that I can follow. So we'll do the same here, and then we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew right down this guide. All right, we now have our nice seam down the center of both of our credit card slots. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick one of both of these and we're going to put the other off to the side. So we're going to toss that over there. Now what we want to do is we want to rotate this so that our top edge is now on the right side. We're going to take this, we're going to mark our center again by folding in half and creating a small crease. Okay, so now we have our nice kind of point crease to help guide us. And we're going to want our crease to match up with the seam that is in the center of the card. And because I don't want to pin, I'm just going to clip these in place. And we are going to sew at 1/4 inch along this edge. Piece 3 is now sewn to our credit card slot. And so what we're going to do is we're going to fold this over. We're going to apply a little bit of pressure to get our seam nice and creased. And then we are going to use the seam allowance of 1/4 inch as a guide to where we should fold and press piece 3. And that way you get a little sneak peek of the fabric, and then we're going to sew 1/8 inch next to this So we don't want it here, we want it closer to the original seam, and that way we catch all the different layers. All right, I finished working the second credit card slot, but as you'll see, when you flip them over, you get a little bit of the raw edge all around the credit card. And this is so that if you do make any mistakes along the way, that you have some trimming space so you can make it just perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim these. All right, next step is assembling the lining. So what we're going to do in this step is we're essentially going to take fabric B of piece 1 and we are going to sew it and connect it to both of the credit card slots that we've completed here. So this is fabric B. First thing we're going to do is we're going to fold it in half to create a nice crease here. This crease is going to be our center guide, as well as eventually going to be the guide for the seam that we make here. So once we have that, what we're going to do is we are going to line up our ruler. The 1/2 inch mark should be at our crease, and I'm going to go right there, and we're going to get our edge to fall up along the ruler, and then we're going to push it up a little bit, and that keeps them 1 inch apart. And we're going to get this side lined up as well. Once we're happy with the placement, which I like to visually check with my crease to see that both sides are evenly spaced, we're going to pin or clip in place. I like clipping because it's quick and easy, especially with all the layers. Goodness. All right, so next what we're going to do is we have to secure this. So using a 1/4 inch stitch, we're going to sew 1/4 inch away from the top and the bottom edge. Now, you're probably going to be sewing in this direction, so this side's going to be really nice and easy. The foot's going to go with it, everything will be fine, none of your slots will move. On this side, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. If you're not comfortable with it, you can stop once you get past the credit card, and you can flop it and sew from this side instead, and that way everything's secure. If you're up to the challenge, what I recommend is using something like a needle or a pin. Sorry, technically it's a pin. And you're going to go inside the fold that we've created here, and you're going to use that once you get closer to it to prevent the foot from pushing it away. So you're going to help it stay where it should be, and you're going to do that with each and every level of the credit card slot to prevent it from moving. The other option is you could pin each one going all the way down, and then just be very careful when you come up against it with your needle, because you don't want to break your needle by hitting the pin itself. Either option's fine, but the goal is to sew the top and the bottom to secure your credit cards. All right, our top and bottom seam are now complete. If you're ever confused about which direction is top and bottom, I recommend using the direction of the print for piece 1, or just kind of flipping over to see which direction your print is for the credit card slots. So our credit cards are now attached to our lining. We're almost done the lining assembly. We no longer need our pins because our seams are keeping everything in place, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. What we do need to do is attach our leather tab. So for this, we're going to center the tab to the right edge of the lining, and we want it centered with the seam as well. So for this, I usually kind of just eyeball it and get it as close as I can. You really want to make sure that the edge itself is straight, because if you sew it just slightly askew, that's going to cause some issues. So I think that's about where I want it. Let me double check. It's hard trying to get this underneath the phone so that you can see it, but like not level to my eyes. So I like to clip it in place so I know it's not wiggling. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a quick stitch to secure it here. I want it 1/4 inch because I don't want it too far that it's visible later on. So just a quick stitch, maybe like 2-3 inches, just to kind of keep it in place. Tab is now secure. We are a little over halfway done the project, and it's time to now move on to the zipper assembly. For the time being, we're going to put this off to the side, and we're going to grab fabric A of piece 1, this, and then we're going to grab both of the linings of piece 4, as well as our zipper. Now for this, it gets a little complicated, so the way that I like to do it is we're going to use this edge, because when you open the wallet, this is the edge that the zipper is on. So we're going to use this edge, and we're going to place our zipper right side down. So the zipper head and the zipper teeth should be facing towards the print. If you need to rotate, go ahead. For me, it's a lot easier to determine whether or not it's centered. So I think right there is good. It's important that if it does have an end on the zipper and you're not using just zipper tape and cutting to length, that you want to make sure that this metal bit that's preventing the zipper head from going further here, you want to make sure that it's further enough in that you're not going to catch it when you sew the perimeter, which is going to be at 3/8 of an inch. Otherwise your zipper, or not your zipper, your sewing needle will hit it and most likely break. So you want to make sure that you give yourself enough wiggle room here to not hit that. Once you've got that, I like to clip it just to prevent it from moving around too much. And once you've got that, so this is what it looks like in the verbiage that I described. What you'll want to do is you'll take one of piece 4 and you're going to flip it so that right side is down. The direction of the print is going this way, and then you're going to center it and have the top edge match up with the zipper. And so I'm just going to adjust my clips. Once you've got that, the best way for me that I like sewing it is to flip it over and follow along the zipper teeth. So because the right side of the zipper is facing upwards in this direction, it's easier for me to sew along it. So you will want to change your zipper or your sewing foot to a zipper foot. Now, because it is this direction, the top portion is the zipper head and the zipper pull. And so you're going to want to pull that most of the way down. And then you're going to sew along this, and as you get closer to the zipper pull, you're going to stop. You're going to lift up your foot. You want to make sure that your sewing needle is down and holding the fabric in place. You're going to lift, and then you're going to zip up, flip back, put your sewing foot down, and sew the last bit of the way. So I'm going to go do that real quick, and I will show you the next step. Okay, our seam is now there, securing all of our layers together. So what we're going to do is we are going to take piece 4, we're going to flip it. At this point, I like to try and create a little bit of a crease just so that it is prepared for the next step and what I want it to do. And then we're going to flip it again so that it's now behind piece 1, and we're going to crease piece 1. If you need to, you can use an iron, but usually most of the time the fabrics that I'm using are cotton, and just a little bit of friction is enough to keep them in place. So now we can see our outside is starting to take a little bit of shape. You can see the zipper you can see our shell and we have our lining. So what I like to do is you can pin or clip this in place, and that way when you're sewing, it's not wiggling around on you. But what you're going to do is, using this edge as a guide, you're going to do a 1/8 of an inch seam. And it's a little hard to tell on this one because I used a navy thread, but it's nice and close to the edge that you've created here. And what that does is, on the inside, it keeps the lining fabric in place so it doesn't bulk up and come close to the zipper teeth and get caught. So no matter what you do, no matter how many times you do it, you never have to worry about the fabric getting caught. So we're going to go ahead, we'll do a nice close stitch to the edge, and I'll show you the next step after. All right, we now have our seam. Look how nice and crisp that is. We can go ahead and remove the pins that were keeping everything in place. And next step is a little bit of layering. So the way that I do this is visually the way the layers work. So we're going to take our spare piece of piece 4, and then we're going to align it with the top edge of the zipper. And it's really important that we're not too far. Everything should match up. You shouldn't have anything sticking out on either edge. And then, just because things like to wiggle, I like to clip in this process. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this. We want the tab to be up, and then we want right side down. And again, we're aligning it so that nothing is sticking out. There will be a little bit at the bottom hanging out over here, and that's only because the zipper is higher up. And then we're going to go ahead and secure those. And this one, the zipper is faced up already, so we can start sewing down this way. And again, once you get closer to the zipper pull, with your needle still in the fabric, lift up your foot, pull over, unzip, put your fabric back down, your foot back down, and then sew the remainder of the way. All right, our seam is in place. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna flop over. We're gonna take the lining piece. We're gonna start to help it understand where it's gonna go by just giving it a little bit of a crease. And then we're gonna flop back over and do the same with our new credit card lining. And now if you see, we left enough space past the last fold. Let me see if I could bring that a little closer. So you can see a little bit of where the fold is and where the blue starts. That space is going to give us just enough to what we need to secure this without cutting off any of our credit card slots. And now that I look at it, my tab looks a little wonky. But we'll see if it really is wonky. Okay, so everything is secured. We're going to go ahead and do our 1/8 of an inch seam. All right, our zipper is fully assembled and attached to the wallet. We can open it. We've got our lining on both sides, but we're not done yet. At this stage, what I like to do is I like to trim any excess zippers tape, and that way I've got a nice clean line to work with. Okay. There's not much over here, but I'll go ahead and trim it. Okay. All right. Now this step is, it can be confusing, but we're just going to go through it slowly. So you want to unzip at least 3/4 of the way. I like to be kind of close to the end, but not too close, because if you go all the way down, now your zipper pull could be in the way when you're trying to sew around this perimeter. So I like it to be at least out of the way enough that it's not a big deal, but it's open enough that I can squeeze my hand in there if need be. So now that we have that, what we're going to do is we're going to flop the leather tab pull on the other side of the zipper. We're going to fold this down, and I'm going to pin just the end. Well, actually, I'm going to clip, not pin. Okay, we're going to push this one up. We're going to flop over, and we're going to push this one up too. And so at this stage, what I like to do is make sure that my ends line up, and so the top of my zipper tapes meet. And then once I've got that right where I want it, I'm going to pin it so it doesn't move. And then we're going to do the same on this side. So we want it pinched and meeting, and then we're going to pull the linings upward and pin in place, clip in place. Okay. And then we're going to get these matched up where they need to be. And for some reason, I seem to be off by just a little bit, but I think it'll work out. Okay. And what we're going to do is, with this raw edge being considered the top, we're going to sew around the perimeter at 3/8 of an inch, and we're going to stop here. So we're going to leave this portion completely open. Okay. Okay, we have stitched our perimeter. A good thing to check is to make sure that your perimeter doesn't go past the original 1/4 inch that you created to keep the credit card slots in line. So as long as your perimeter is past that, you're good. Otherwise, that stitch will be seen when we flip it out. So the first thing we want to do is trim our corners. I like to do a little bit of an excessive trim, and that helps me get really nice pointy corners. And you want to make sure not to cut the stitch. Now, although these are considered corners, we're not going to trim these. Okay. Next step is the very exciting reveal, where you get to see how you did. I like to try and push the zipper open just a little bit more now that I no longer need to sew. Okay, so that is our credit card side. I'm going to push, pinch in the corners, and then pull the edges around it so I can help see. And then you can use your finger or a tool. You'll want to go inside and push the corners out until they look really nice. Okay, that looks nice and defined for me. For now, we're going to keep our lining out, and we're going to push the corner here to make that nice and crisp. If you want to, at this stage, while the lining's still out, you can go through and give this a nice ironing, because as you can see, when you pull through, it creates quite a few wrinkles and looks a little unsatisfying. I like to do that at the end, so we're going to move on to the next step, which is pushing the lining in. And you want to use, so this seam, you want to try and keep it along this. Now your lining should be long enough to reach past the center crease that we've created here. So I'm going to get that in place. Mine falls right about there. I'm going to pinch it, and I'm going to pin it. And then I'm going to do the same with the other side. And then flatten out what you can, because any creases are going to become permanent once you sew your last seam. Okay, so we're nice, we're in place. I'm going to zip that up so nothing wiggles around. And then I'm going to sew along the crease from the top to the bottom. You guys, we finished. I'm so excited. So I did a once over with an iron just to get rid of any wrinkles that happened from us turning the right side out and finishing up the wallet. It looks really nice and crisp now. I love the layout and where all of the pieces fit. It turned out super beautiful, and it's going to be such an amazing gift. But I want to see what yours turned out like. So be sure to share it. Tag me in it if you could, maybe. I just want to see. And then if you want to tag the Ellie Snap Wallet as a hashtag, if that's a thing, I guess I make that a thing. So I'll make that a thing. And that way other people can do it, and hopefully more people can fall in love with this beautiful pattern and share it. I'm so excited. I'm really curious to see what fabrics you chose. Be sure to share. I guess with it being YouTube, I'm supposed to say like, follow, subscribe, whatever, all that jazz is. If you want to, sure. I'm probably only gonna do more crafty things. Yay!